Well, welcome. I've got Blaine Pederson with me, and I just want to share a little information on who Blaine is before I get into telling you about my relationship with him and how I know him. But Blaine Pederson was the 1982 Rookie of the Year in the Canadian Professional Rodeo Association. He was also the Canadian champion that year. He's been to the Canadian Finals Rodeo 15 times, the National Finals Rodeo 5 times. He's 4 times Canadian steer wrestling champion, 2-time Canadian high point champion. He's won the 50,000 at the Calgary Stampede twice in 1988 and 1991. He's been 2-time average winner at the National Finals Rodeo, and in 1994 he was the world champion. So there's a quick background on Blaine, but Blaine, thanks for being with me. I appreciate you joining me today.
You bet.
So last couple weeks ago, I was actually on a call with Tyson Durfee interviewing him, and we were talking about his world championship wins and whatnot, and we got talking about mentors. And when we got talking about mentors, I said, you know what? Blaine was a big mentor to me, and I don't know why I haven't asked him to be on my show before. And so that's when I sent you a message, and thank you for saying you'd do it. And so I really appreciate that. I want to start off. So what I talk about a lot on my shows are, success, mindset, different stuff like that. Starting off, just share with us where you live. And the reason I say that to begin with, well, first tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into rodeo, and where you live.
Well, grew up in Amisk, Alberta, which is about 90 miles straight east of Camrose, 25 miles south of Wainwright, Alberta. And I just grew up wanting to be a cowboy, and I lived, and every day of my life I just wanted to be a cowboy, and I don't know why. And because I come from a farming background, my dad was a strict grain farmer, had a few cows, knew nothing about rodeo, and I just got with a neighbor here down the road. His name was Alan Currier, and he's won the wild cow milking at Calgary several times and won the Canadian a few times in the wild cow milking. But to me, he was a real cowboy, and that's kind of all I knew. And he was a great cowboy, but he kind of inspired me to get going. He was as old as my dad was, but kind of a total different mold. I mean, he was a cowboy and a rancher, and that's kind of what I wanted to be. So I just kind of went over there and roped a few calves with him, and started hanging around him, going to brandings, and hanging with a rope all the time. And then he kind of pointed me in the direction of you should be doing something else too. And then steer wrestling got brought in the picture, and I got hanging around with the Lays. They were from about 50 miles southeast of here, and started steer wrestling, and that's kind of how I became a steer wrestler.
Awesome. Well, I've got a few questions I want to go back in your beginning years to talk about. But first of all, because that's what brought this up to begin with, it sounds like he was a mentor to you. And I want to talk about your mentorship to me, because, you'd won the world in 94, and I had just barely started steer wrestling, and yours I had learned from my brother, and that's where I started. And then I knew that Blaine Pederson, world champion, was having a school. So I came up there for the first time, had no idea where Amisk was at the time, and just booked the hotel there. And it was the memories I have of your schools. I can't remember how many years in a row I came up there. But the thing that was so cool about it to me was, here I was, a young kid that just started out, and yeah, learning the process and everything was so cool. But to have a Canadian champion, a world champion, just bring me in and treat me how you did. And then, some of my best memories of your school are sitting up in your top place up there with Rod Lyman, Todd Bogus, Rod Warren, all these, Canadian champion, world champions that just treated me like one of you guys. And so I would like to hear your thoughts on mentorship, on maybe, I look at guys like Lee Graves, Jody Brown. You've been a mentor to so many people. What are your thoughts on mentorship?
Well, I'm pretty humble when I come to that, but I'm really honored that people think of me that way, because to me, I'm just another person. I'm a rancher now, and really looking back on you coming to the schools and Lee Graves living here and the success he had, and I know you had success too, but you all had good talent. But as far as being a mentor to you guys, it's a great honor, and I really cherish the moments we had together, because they were a lot of fun. We put through a lot of kids through this school, and a lot of them did well, and that's what I really liked about it. And I really encouraged them to come back. And not just because I wanted your money to keep me doing this thing, but it was fun. It was a lot of fun, and I could see the improvement in everybody. And then for Lee Graves to go ahead and win 2 world titles, it just, that really made me feel good. That's what rodeo is all about, and that was probably as much of a high to me as it was me winning the world.
That was actually a comment that Tyson Durfee made in our conversation. He says, all cowboys are good guys, but steer wrestlers are a different breed, because you can be fighting each other for the world championship and you're all cheering for each other. And I think that's really cool how everyone helps each other and is encouraging each other to do their best.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. And, Rod Lyman come up and Brad Gleason one year and had a school with me. And I'd been rodeoing with them guys and looked up to them myself. And then when it comes right down to me winning the world title, them are the guys I had to beat, it was one of them deals where, it can be so hard to win sometimes and so easy. And that year that I won the world, I missed a steer in the 9th go around and went from 1st to 3rd in the average by spinning around and throwing him on the wrong side. And you probably remember that, Jeff. And I really remember it. I honestly thought I was beat. When I missed that steer and spun around with still 7 seconds on him, didn't hurt me a whole bunch in the average. But, it just, I felt to myself that night that I was defeated. My chances were gone. But then Candace, our daughter, she inspired me and said, "Dad, you can do it." And we sat down in the motel room that night, and she just kind of picked me up, and we won out in the 10th go around. And then Rod Lyman had the bad luck, and that brought me to the top again, so if you don't quit believing, it'll come around. But it just seemed like, it was all for me that year. Somebody was looking out for me, but and Rod had some bad luck. He broke the barrier in the 10th go around, and then ended up falling off his horse at the back end, and nobody wanted to see that. But when he broke the barrier, I knew I'd won the world. And I wasn't smiling in the background because he'd fallen off his horse. I knew I'd won the world championship, and after seeing him break the barrier. But you don't know until it's all over. And sometimes it can be real hard to win, and sometimes real easy, just like it's your turn.
You know, one of the things that I heard that you had said was that you had never had any doubt that you would win a world championship. It's just a matter of when. You know, how does someone develop that mindset and confidence in themselves?
Well, you know, Jeff, when I was rodeoing, the big thing with the way I looked at things is I always set a goal at the beginning of the year. And the year that I decided to try to go to Vegas, I set a goal too low. I mean, I won the 50,000 at Calgary in 1988 and decided to give it a shot to make the NFR. And I should have set my goals higher than that. But I mean, that was my goal, to try and make the NFR, and I did it that year. And I mean, had a decent finals, not great, but my goal was to make the finals, and I didn't set it any higher. And I should have. But, you know, as you get older and seasoned, you learn these things. And I had to learn the hard way and set my goals. I didn't want to set them too high, but I mean, I've learned over the years that always set your goals high. You know, you don't go out and tell everybody that you're going to do this, but in your mind, set it high. And, you know, that's the best way to do it. When Lee Graves come around here and stayed here, you know, when he made his first NFR, I told him, I said, Lee, now set your goals high. You know, I said, I told him my situation, that I was just trying to make the NFR the first year. I said, you got the talent to win it. You know, and he didn't win it, but I mean, he had a good finals. And I said, don't ever think that you're not supposed to be here, because you beat all these guys all summer. So, I mean, you're just as good as them. You got to tell yourself that. And he did that, and it was easy for him. And I think that's why he turned around and won 2 world titles. I mean, he had it, you know, in the back of his mind. He always had his goals high.
How did you deal with it if things weren't going your way, if you were in a slump and you weren't winning? How did you get your mindset turned so you could start winning again?
Well, most of the time, Jeff, you know, probably why I've had a knee replacement already is because I went home to practice. You know, if I had a bad weekend, I'd go home and run probably way too many steers. Like I'd get Dave Gibson to come over, or John Gibson, and we'd just run steers. And I'd run 10 in the practice pen, and I wanted to catch 10 because they were my steers, my practice pen. And I mean, I didn't try to practice too much, but I practiced a lot, and on strong cattle, and just to get my mind where, hey, I can do it again. I mean, I can, you know, I had a bad weekend last weekend because of certain situations. I didn't draw real good or broke a barrier. So I really focused on those things when I got home. You know, every steer I'd back in the corner, and I didn't take it as a joke. I mean, this was serious. I mean, we're going to go as if this was a steer that I screwed up in Wainwright, Alberta, you know, or the steer I screwed up in Lethbridge. I mean, it's one of them things that I just really practiced and got my mindset right. And when I unsaddled my horses that night, I was ready to go to the next rodeo.
A lot of the time people get in those slumps and their confidence goes in the wrong direction. And without doing something, whether it's getting in the practice pen or something, it just continues to compound and build upon itself, and it's hard to get out of that.
Yes, that's right. And you know, accepting defeat is one of the hardest things going down the road. And I've seen that so much in rodeo, and I've seen Joe Beaver, you know, I've rodeoed with all them guys, and I've seen the way they handle defeat. You know, some people get mad and start throwing and kicking stuff around, and it doesn't look good, but that's what it takes to try to better yourself. But I mean, I remember going to the NFR and Joe Beaver having a bad finals, and you just kind of wanted to get out there to see what his reaction was. Like, what's he going to do tonight? I mean, you know it wasn't going to be good. So then all of a sudden people start to see that and they think, well, I hope he doesn't do good tonight to see what kind of a fit he's going to throw away. And I'm not just saying this of Joe Beaver, but I just remember Joe coming outside and just mad as can be. And I mean, letting the whole world know about it. And maybe that was a good thing. Maybe that's what he needed to do, but I couldn't do that. I did it one time at a rodeo. I think I was at Black Diamond, and I missed a steer or didn't do something right, and I come back, and I hadn't been winning a whole lot. I peeled my knee brace off and threw it across the arena, and I was walking back to the trailer, and everybody's looking at me, and I kind of thought to myself for a second, you know what? I'm not making a very good impression. I mean, now they're going to want me to do bad all the time. So I kind of grew. I learned by my mistakes there, and I did learn. I mean, stay focused and don't take it out in the arena or outside the arena. Just go home and deal with it. And I dealt with it in the practice pen.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you probably, you know, when you come to my schools, I probably wasn't running a whole bunch of steers, but I mean, if you talk to John Gibson or Dave Gibson or Leon Lay or, you know, BJ, all the guys that used to come here and practice, they know how serious I was in practice. But I mean, as far as staying focused, we'd throw a lot of steers and try to outdo one another in the practice pen. We hoped they did well and would praise them when they did well. But I mean, you always had in your back of your mind, okay, he made a good run. Well, I want to make a good run now, and I'm going to beat him. And I mean, that's kind of how we practiced, and I think that's why I was so successful.
You know, I've actually had conversations about that with people about the difference between, well, the whole concept of intentional practice and, you know, practicing with the intent to win, because you can go through the motions and say, yeah, I practice, but practicing with that competitive spirit and, you know, practicing to win the Canadian Championship, practicing to win the World Championship is a different level. So that sounds like that's what you guys were doing.
Yeah, no, and that's what I've got a grandson now that's 16 years old, and he's Jamie Lee's boy, and he wants to be a cowboy. But, you know, Jamie Lee says, well, are you going to work with him? And I said, no, I'm not going to work with him until he wants to work with me. You know, I'm not going to push him. My dad didn't push me. You got to want that. And, you know, when I see him coming around saying, Grandpa, you know, can we run the steers in? Can we practice? Can we do this? I'll help him a lot. But until that day comes, I'm not going to push him. You know, you got to want that. I mean, it don't matter if you're playing basketball or hockey or whatever. I mean, that's what you think about all the time. And I mean, if it's not, if he's thinking that he needs to be a bowler just because I had good success, I mean, it's a long road. I mean, you look back at all the work and hard work you put into things just to get what you did. And I mean, when you read off my biography there, I thought, geez, I guess I did do a little bit, you know, but you kind of forget about those things. But then you start looking at some of the kids coming up, you know, that it takes years for them to win their first Canadian title. And I was lucky enough to win it the first year, you know, in my rookie year. And it's just something that you just can't put into somebody. I mean, I know, you know, sometimes it takes a lot of years to build up lots of good stats about people. You know, like Crosby, he is one of the best hockey players, but he didn't just come out of the blue the first year and just set the world on fire. I mean, he had to mature in different ways, and I seen that. I mean, they were trying to get at his mind, and they did get on him there for a few years, and he was throwing fits, and, you know, instead of just being McDavid, the way he handles pressure and himself is nobody picks on him because he's so darn fast and so good that people just they can't catch him. But I mean, it's just something that you grow up with, and if you can find that sweet spot and follow through it, it's going to work for you.
So out of my own curiosity, what's your fastest time?
I was 3.2 at Rodeo Royal one spring in the long go, and then come back in the short go and was 3.2. I was 6'4" on 2 steers. So I won the all around there. I 40% of them in the steer rest and won all I possibly could. That's probably one of my biggest memories that I've got. And I've got the Stu Henry Memorial Buckle here that proves I was an all around champion at, that was my quickest time, was 3.2. But then to turn around and come back and be 3.2 again in the short round, that was, to me, unbelievable. Back at it.
That was that Canadian record?
No, I can't. Well, I think the Canadian record now is what, 2.9?
Yeah, but back, I remember, I think Gibson at Stavely was 3.2 and tied the record of that year that he was 3.2. So maybe it was 3.1. And
no, I think he was 3.1.
Was it
3.1 or
okay?
Maybe I can't remember either. I'd have to look back. But I remember one year, Vern Smith at the CFR was 2.9 and broke the barrier. And I mean, they bragged about that forever. And I said, he wasn't. They said, yeah, he was 2.9, but he broke the barrier. Said, yeah, well, I might have been 2.9 too if I wouldn't have been late.
I guess I was 3.4 at Rodeo Royal, but I broke the barrier. So that didn't help me any.
Yeah. No, there's lots of ifs in rodeo. Yeah,
for sure. No, that's awesome. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk about these things, because I mean, it's just fun talking to you again, but just to be able to talk to someone that's won the Canadian championship as many times as you, and understand the goal setting, the mindset and all that. I think it's something a lot of people can learn from. It doesn't matter if it's business, rodeo, or another sport. There's so much involved in the mindset part of it that you're not going to do it unless you have the right mindset.
No, that's right. And that's what I used to try and, tell Lee Graves all the time, is you got to have the right mindset. Like when he'd phone me lots, and he'd be driving down the road, and he'd had a tough weekend, and I was retired, and I'd say, you know what, Lee, you've got it. I said, you got what it takes. And I said, you just keep that mind right and you'll do it. I mean, it's all about mindset, and to get it on there straight and stay focused, and he did have a good career and did great success. But I mean, there was times people would say that I was kind of his robot. He'd do everything that I wanted to. Like when they'd come practice here, there'd be a strong steer in the pen, and I'd say, Leroy, get on around that steer. Why me? I says, because you can do it. And he'd go out and he'd throw that steer out of the arena. And these guys like BJ and them, they just kind of shake their head. They'd walk away and shake their head. And that was before he won the race. I mean, I could see it in him when he come here and lived with us. We'd come in at night, and I'd tell my wife, I'd say, boy, that kid can bowl, but he just needed to learn that himself. He had to get the right mindset to tell himself, I can do this. Instead of me telling him all the time, you can do it, you can do it. You got to have it yourself. And that's what he finally got a hold of, and the rest is history,
Yeah. So what is it, do you think, that got it to that point where, he heard you saying it over and over? What is it that finally made him believe it himself?
Well, I think he just, I got him going in the right direction, and telling him, you need to do this. You're good. Time after time, I told him, I said, Leroy, you got it. I mean, I can see it. I've been there, done that. You just got to go to show him. You can show us in the practice pen all day long, and throw these steers out of the arena and ride a horse great. I mean, you do everything that it takes to be a world champion, and now you just got to go do it. And, you know, like, I don't know if you were at one of my last schools I had here, but Lee and BJ and I were traveling together. We were going out to Ashcroft and Kelowna, and we'd put through about 60 students that spring, and they had been hanging around here and helping me out. And, you know, I kind of used Leroy as a example every time. You know, I'd say, okay, Leroy, I mean, get on and show him that this steer can be thrown. You know, like he is stronger, but I mean, you do things right and you can do it. And he'd do it. And, you know, they just thought Lee Graves was it. He was the next one. And he was. But I told Yvonne, I said, you know, I was right at the end of my career. I'd won the world. And I said, I don't want to go to Ashcroft and Kelowna. And I'd never turned out of a rodeo in my life before. Like, unless something happened that we couldn't get there and there was a complication or whatever, but still, I don't even remember many of them. But I remember they were getting the horses ready and they were headed out to the truck and trailer, and I slid the arena door open and I said, you guys go ahead. And they both spun around in their tracks and looked at me and said, you're not coming? I said, no, I'm going to stay home this weekend. I'm tired. And I said, I just don't have that mindset that it needs to go out there and win. I said, you know, in the back of my mind, it's something's telling me I don't really want to go. I'm not going to go. And they couldn't believe it. They just looked at me, you got to come. Like, I can't go without you. Like, just give me that. They give me that sad look, like they were beat. They were lost. Like they were so relying on me all the time, you know? And that's what Lee needed to get, was to start relying on himself a little more. You know, so used to me doing the entry and doing the driving and doing everything, you know, let's get there. You know where to go, you know, I know what exit you got to turn off at. I've been there so many times that, you know, I could get there with my eyes closed, and they left, but they were just like two dogs that were beat up. I still can remember the look on their face, and they drove out the yard. I think they still kept thinking I was going to say, hold it, I'm coming. But that's a memory I remember. And I told Leroy, I said, until you get where you could. And it took him a while. Like, and then I started not going, and he wanted to go hard. And I said, I just can't go with you. I said, I don't have it anymore. I want to stay home and ranch and stay with my family. I said, I've set my goal. I won the world. And you know, it took him a while, but I mean, it took lots of phone calls. I mean, how do you enter? How do you do this? How do you do that? You know? And, but that's the responsibility that you got to take on your own too. I mean, it's not just, you got to have everything it takes from entering a rodeo to getting to a rodeo to competing at a rodeo, and that good mindset and staying the same. I'll tell you another story. When I won the world, Jeff, Wrangler wanted to meet with me at the Rio Casino the next morning after I'd won the world. And I'd won the average in 1991 and was right there for runner-up of the world. Oak Berry beat me that year. And then Mark Roy won the world in 92. I hazed for him there. I didn't make him that year. And 93, I missed it by a few $100s. So 94, when I finally got there, it was a year that I'll always remember, because I was down in about 16th spot and everybody would want home. And I said to Yvonne, I said, you got to come with me. I said, I got to get to these finals because I got a good feeling this year. And I wasn't even in the top 15. So she jumped in with me. We went to Billings. I won good at Billings. I went to Central Point, won Central Point, went to, Temecula, California. I think I won Temecula, flew over to went to Industry, and then flew over to couple rodeos in Texas, and I just went from 16th to up to 12th. So I was on such a high going into the finals. I didn't want to quit, but all of a sudden you got to go home and practice and stay focused. And I won the Canadian and the high point that year, and knew I was going to Vegas. So I was all on a high, and then first 5 go rounds in Vegas was outstanding. It was just a fight between Brad and Rod and myself, and one guy'd win one day, one guy'd win the next, and it's just one of them battles, eh? And then the last 5 weren't quite so great. It wasn't drawn right at the top, but staying in there. And then I had that 9th go round issue. So there's a lot of that year had been a lot of pressure, and I finally won the world. It's just kind of a relief. And Wrangler wanted to meet with me Monday morning after the finals. So we met there, and Greg Tuza was the head of Wrangler at that time. And he said, Blaine, we want to sign you up to wear Wranglers, and we're going to give you a cash bonus if you win. Here's the deal. If you win a Canadian, we're going to give you X amount of dollars. If you win World, we're going to give you X amount of dollars. If you win the average, we're going to give you X amount of dollars. And I turned to him and I said, Greg, you serious? Yeah, we're really serious. We want you on board. I said, well, I'll be totally honest with you, Greg, is I've got a wife and 2 kids at home, and I've won the world. I've been telling them for years that I'm going to win this world title. And I finally did it. And now you're telling me I got to do it all over again before I get paid. And he goes, well, what do you mean? I said, well, you got all this stuff that I could possibly win if I do this again. And I've already won 4 Canadians, 2 high points, 50,000 Calgary twice. I've done so much in my career, and now I haven't gotten no sponsorship at all. And now you guys want to start sponsoring me after I've done all this? And I said, I'm tired. I just want to go home. And he looked at me and he goes, I really appreciate you having said that. He said, tell you what we're going to do. We're going to sign you up as if this hadn't happened, like as if this was the beginning of last year. So they give me all the bonuses. They give me all the cash rewards. And I'm still wearing Wranglers from them for life, eh? And but if I wouldn't have said that and been honest with them, I told them, I said, I'm tired. You'd be the wrong guy to sponsor, because I'm not going to go do all these miles I've proven what I wanted to. Sure, I'd like to win 10 world titles, but they don't come that easy. And I want to be a rancher now, and I want to go home and just settle down. And that's what I did. That was my next goal. So that's what I did. And I did continue on a little bit after that, and, made the CFR a few times. But as far as making the NFR, I didn't try to. If I would have said that, I would have never got it. Sometimes you just got to speak up and say what's on your mind. And he really appreciated me saying that.
Right. Were you were also sponsored by a boot company, right?
Yeah, Brahma Boots.
Was it
They
Brahma?
had me on a poster a little bit, but that was, the sponsorship back then was nothing like it is now. Like Copenhagen Skull Inc. give me a few shirts to wear too. There was never any cash involved, So it was anything that we did going down the road, money we made. That was all on our own, out of our pocket, in our pocket. Nowadays you see all these on all these guys, and you wonder how much is actually, support, like how much money is actually there supporting you. That patch has got to mean something. But everybody making the NFR has got lots of patches on, and look at the NFR tapes when we were going. You didn't see any, maybe a Wrangler shirt or 2, but that was it.
Right. No, the reason I know that the boots is because that poster's on my son's wall.
Oh yeah. No, it's been good, but I mean, I remember going to Donnie Johansson the year he wanted me on that poster. And I said to him, I said, well, what can you give me? Like, well, we can give you a pair of boots. I go, okay, is that it? We can get somebody else if you don't want to. You know, it's one of them deals that anybody would have taken it. You know, we should have been playing more hard to get.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah.
But you're just so happy to get anything. You know, when I rodeoed, I mean, because everything costs money. I mean, it didn't cost near like it does now, but it's still. I mean, the inflation has gone up so much, so things have you got to be paid now. I mean, I can't imagine going down the road now, like without a sponsor.
Yeah, just no kidding.
Fill up that truck. It just takes half your calf check right there.
Well, especially like that last push at the end of the 94 season. If you're doing all that traveling on your own and then flying to other rodeos, yeah, that's not cheap. No, it wasn't cheap. And it was almost a divorce for me and Yvonne too. I left her I said, this is going to be a holiday. I said, you know, we'll just have fun. And of course I get fouled at a couple of rodeos as soon as we leave home. And now I've got a couple of rodeos left over because I had to go to all my rodeos, and I didn't have to, but so I entered Waco, Texas, and a couple over there just because I had fouled in California. I couldn't get to them. I was up the same day at the Cow Palace as I was in the others. And so I left her. I dropped her off at LA International Airport. Or no, she dropped me off, sorry. And she had the truck and camper and the horses on the back, 3-horse trailer, 6 lanes of traffic, and she headed to John W. Jones's place in Morro Bay, California, to stay there for a couple of days while I flew over to these other rodeos. And then she drove up to the Cow Palace by herself and unloaded the horses and did this, and there was nobody around there. And I don't know if you've ever been to San Francisco at the Cow Palace, but it's kind of a grubby part of town. And yeah. She phoned John W. Jones, and no cell phones back then. I mean, we couldn't even get a hold of each other. We just said, well, we'll meet at such and such. And so Johnny said to Yvonne, says, you go get a motel room. Don't you be sleeping in your camper that night, eh? And I told her that day, I said, I've got your airline ticket to fly home from the Cow Palace, and I will meet you because I'm flying in about the time you're flying out. We got a little bit of time there. We'll have breakfast. We'll say our goodbyes. I'll go compete at the Cow Palace, and you can fly home. And I don't know why she flew home, but I should have kept her to drive home. But the deal was, if I didn't do good at the Cow Palace, I had to fly over to New York. There was another rodeo in New York. So I had to fly. I was entered over there, and I wanted so bad to not go to that rodeo, because if I did good at the Cow Palace, I didn't have to go there. So anyways, my flight is late getting in, and her flight's wanting to leave, and she needs her ticket from me. And we're running down the aisleway, and I hand her my ticket and say sorry, and she's got tears in her eyes, and she says, don't you ever do that to me again. I'll remember that forever. The look on her face and what I'd put her through to get that. So, I mean, there was a lot of hard times that fall too. I mean, I did well, but I mean, it took a lot of work and a lot of help from her to get where I did. And ended up doing good at the Cow Palace, made the short round and had the finals made. So I didn't have to go to New York. So I got to drive home myself. Oh, that is great. Well, this has been awesome. I really appreciate this. Thank you.